The title of the text is Body Name, the Brotherhood, Chronotope, and Social Choreography. In this research paper, I argue that cultural memory is to a considerable extent produced, sustained, and reinforced through the performative strategies of staging media events and ritualized collective body space and body time relations. Media events and rituals are memory sites that produce imagined social connections and form a celebratory community experience. The annual performances of celebrating President Tito's birthday on the ground of the Yugoslav National Army Stadium in Belgrade was a cyclic renewal of forever youthful nation based on Titoist concepts of brotherhood and unity. Annually, on the 25th of May, in the vocally reverberating space of the stadium, the event of Slet served as the closure and climax of the rally of youth with a birthday pledge to Josip Broz Tito from all people of Yugoslavia. The son of all Yugoslavian nations was placed high on the central seat in the auditorium space that enabled him to watch his politically charged and semantically blurred nickname, Tito, being inscribed on the ground of the stadium by the bodies of his subjects, thus creating a mythical body name of the sovereign. Bodies of nations and nationalities, narodi I narodnosti, were arranged in images of sun, heart, flower, and finally in letters of the president's name. Writing Tito's name by bodies is in itself a writing of nations, all embedded in Slet Chronotope and embodied in the memory of the recursive ritual of celebrating the Day of Youth. Somatic topographies of nations and nationalities were manifested under a watchful eye of the marshal as a lascivious jouissance in observing the festive young bodies writing Tito for Tito himself. Slets were held long after Tito's death and took place until 1987 in an uncanny nostalgic form of collective Yugoslav identities in the dawn of emerging ethnic conflict. The Slet memory narrative is framed in haunting chronotope of spectral echoed temporality and of the phantom space of the sovereign's signature.
Naša je srca palo. Tito, Tito, Tito je naše sunce. Tito, Tito, Tito je naše srce. Našoj sreći nigde kraja, jer nas ista ljubav spaja. Tito, Tito, Tito je naše sunce. Tito, Tito, Tito je naše srce, našoj sreći nigde kraja, jer nas ista ljubav spaja. Narod, partija, omladina, armija. Narod, partija, omladina, armija. Narod, partija, omladina, armija. Narod, partija, omladina, armija. Za mir, za Jugoslaviju, sretnu
Once upon a time, there was a country and a people and a leader in the wake of new Yugoslav man ideology, once and recurring as an epiphanic spectre in the vampire future of the new ethnic countries. The land, Yugoslavia, evaporated in blood. The leader, Marshal Josip Broz Tito, traveled away by the famous ghostly blue train to the great unknown, and the people, well, the people are missing, as Paul Klee would say regarding Bauhaus audience. Yugoslav audience and theater are now an archivable media memory, collective oblivion and fetish. One can speak of celebratory political ritual of the Day of Youth only as a bricoleur, by collecting and patchworking with images, words, attributions, and discursive statements that are already there in the archive with all its disseminated cross-categories, always recontextualized, reread, repeated through intimate or collective body memory. The name of my paper is body name, and this tautology is intentional. And signature, signed in bodies, which would be the uncanny protagonist of this rhapsodic memorial theory, is always an empty but redundant place of topos or dystopos of origin, and, as Derrida nicely put it, as a trace of its own absence being only present as such in archival erasure inscription praxis of media images of national body name. Maja Brkalčić, in a paper named Tito's Bodies in Word and Image, states the common fact that in the books used by the partisans during World War II to teach children and adults to read and write, the first letters that pupils learned to spell were I, O, and T. The first word they learned to write was Tito. The process of literacy was displaced from learning to write one's own name to one primarily writing the name of the other, and not just any other, but the worshipped instigator of the national body, the political absolute. A decade later, one chained its body in a mass body signature. This bodily literacy is unavoidably a closure of cumulative didactics and performative repetitions of the process of constituting the plural body as one, the same as a resurrection of an always youthful body of the dying president. This is Tito's signature reproduced ad infinitum, an autograph of its own kind. So this is the Marshal signature, or is it? Or is it this, the badge to pin on a jacket, shirt, or to be collected? Maybe this one, in the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia diplomatic passport issued in the name of Josip Broz Tito. This is in Belgrade in 1973, in collection in the Museum of Yugoslav History. Or is it this body name, the signature itself, in a way Kafkaesque? The last one is the uncanny one, and one of my primary interests. It is a gift from the people to Tito for his birthday. The name is signed in lowercase letters, thus making Tito's proper name a common noun. It stands for everything, indeed, for every man or every Yugoslav man, and everybody that dances off Tito's name, as Tito is a body part of the dismembered body of the sovereign. Annual performances of celebrating President Tito's birthday on the ground of the Yugoslav National Army Stadium in Belgrade was a cyclic renewal of forever youthful nation based on Titoist concepts of brotherhood and unity, as I have already stated. On 25th of May, on the vocally echoing space of the stadium, the event of Slet served as a closure for the delivery of the widely traveled baton with a birthday pledge to Josip Broz Tito from all the people of Yugoslavia. Yugoslav National Army Stadium, together with the official presidential residency and the museum of the 25th of May, today Museum of Yugoslav History, located in Dedinje in Belgrade, represents one of the central places of ideological specialization of socialist Yugoslavism, as Ignjatović states, and the locus of the cult of Marshal Tito and adored Titoscape welcoming the citizenry. During a political ritual of the Day of Youth since 1957, the museum, stadium, and surrounding parks became the places of constituting political national body and its unity with the body of the sovereign, a nucleus of spatial, semiotic, and ideological whole. The greatest son of all Yugoslavian nations was placed high on the podium of the auditorium space that enabled him to watch his politically charged and semantically blurred nickname, Tito, being inscribed on the ground of the stadium by the bodies of his youthful subjects, thus creating a mythical body name of the sovereign. The Day of Youth was a celebratory media event, a spectacle of the body, ordered from the obscure mythical society center, organized and produced by the media and performed by Yugoslav youth. It was a spectacular media ritual with a strong system of hierarchy, particularly a hierarchy of bodies. So, from our perspective, the site is almost the same. Tito is, we can imagine, to our imaginary left, and we are slightly out of place. And this shifting context is indeed fruitful. In this hierarchy, Tito is the name that names the docile bodies, and this ritual can be considered as an effect caused by the president's proper name. A cumulative temporality of the pedagogical, in Homi Bhabha's words, and repetitious recursive strategy of the performative create marked sites for the nation's autobiography writing by ways of hybrid split. So the nation is a split subject, a fractured body made whole by narrative and performative strategies. Bojana Videkanić states that during the Day of Youth, the body became a common property, a conductor of powerful images, and as Foucault argues, the body became the property of society, the object of collective and useful appropriation. Bojana Videkanić identifies the spectacle of bodies as an ideological mechanism for representing president's body. Tito's body is omnipresent and, in an uncanny mass floats representing Tito's name, it is forever young. Nevertheless, Tito is present, he is in everybody, and he is everybody that is representing him, and this signature is of great importance. To establish the law of identity and community by creating imaginary community based on repetitions, representation of significant places and on significant dates, is to set in motion a echography of the choir or the ghostly temporality of repetition. State holidays, people's parades and people's laments and mournings, media events, in terms of Peter Sloterdijk, are a special sign revealing community as a vibrating body of shared attention and excitement. Chronotope is set at the stadium and as a birthday present. This festive social choreography, together with the stadium space as a special street socialist cake, with the auditorium as a topping, a bittersweet topping in homogeneous melange. If Tito is every Yugoslav man, his body-chained name is in a way a choreographical container of Tito himself. His signature, written in bodies chained together, is a colorful cake inscription, the name of the guest of honor. So, the marshal can blow out the candles, that is, he can easily blow his youthful children away from the topos of the festival if he wishes. Or, can we understand this in a different manner, aside from President's birthday ritual in somewhat grotesque terms, from the perspective of the theory of the signature between semiology and hermeneutics, in Agamben's words? There are two very obscure questions regarding the body name signature of the sovereign. Is it a citation? Is it a counterfeit? Or, to avoid binary possibilities, the either-or question form, what can we say about the figure of the author in this signature spectacle? Who is the author? Who is receiving the confirmation? Who is stamped? who is signed, and for whom. It is an inextricable tangle of threads. A signature is a representational mark, one that stands for the subject, after the subject, in respect of the questions of ownership, authorship, possession, property, and authenticity. It functions as a trace of an absent I or of the absent subject. It can always be forged, copied, accredited to another. In our case, the metonymy of the signature is out of joint. It is a signature in the presence of the signatory, signed by multiple others in flesh and blood, as a joyous performance of a demanding dance routine. So it's a little bit grotesque, we can surely admit, and this effect stems just as much in the grotesque political slogan present in the Yugoslav political imaginary: we are Titos, Tito is ours. Mi smo Titovi, Tito je naš. So, Tito is not just a name or a nickname, it is a paradigm. In the nation's youth, arranged in the shape of a giant signature of the sovereign, the signature's double-jointedness is revealed. Its irreversibility and its repeatable reproducibility is a sign to be recognized. Peggy Camus, reading Derrida, noticed a displaced author, a ghost trace in a scene of writing, or in our case, a theater of communal oblivion with only two key celebrants, bodies of a name and the body itself, the king's two bodies in one place. Much has been said on Tito's omnipresence, of the dissemination of Tito's body and image to the country's sites through architecture, through political engagement, through literature, and through media iconography. An omnipresent position between life and language provides Tito's identification with his country and with its people. According to Kantorowicz's statement that the prince is the res publica and res publica is in the prince, and from this we can conclude that the politics of representation of Tito's body, name, and image was a heavy machinery based only on effects of the presence of the president and not on the president's presence itself. Tito was celebrated, even during his life, in various sculptures in rock, made of rock, as being a rock, monolithic and gigantic. On the trace of the notion of the effects of presence of the president, it is an interesting phenomenon that years after his death, his presence was represented in a stadium on the Day of Youth in styrofoam, as an uncanny mocking parody of this elevated presence of Tito in the stadium, as a humorous Titophany. A signature is not an author or even simply the proper name of an author. It is the mark of an articulation at the border between life and letters, body and language. An articulation both joins and divides. It joins and divides identity with or from difference, as Peggy Camus states. The double speciality of the topos of a signature, both stadium and bodies, destabilizes the supposed exteriority of author, for Tito's gaze is intrinsic to a sense of extimity in terms of Jacques Lacan. This body name seduces the sovereign, or at least intends to, and this courting forges and cites the sovereign's signature at once. Ratko Močnik, the well-known Slovenian theorist, wrote that the greatest art of Josip Broz is called Tito. Already in the name of true socialism, Josip Broz found a way to use artistic means to support post-revolutionary socialist politics. On the fringe of general representation with the political practice of a one-party system, he intervened with an outdated but all the more popular artistic practice, producing with pop-romantic mastery the work of art known as Tito. How can this, Močnik's statement, correspond to the Titoist poet Manojlo Gavrilović verses? Open quote, "There is a wonderful country and it is called Tito." End of quote. As Maja Brkljačić notes, Tito is represented here as both local and translocal. It is his name, his body, that is singular in time and space and thus local, but because he is the one with the state, the body is everywhere, where the universal power of the state is at all times and in all places. It has to work in both directions. If he is present where the state is present where his body is. The communist revival of the Christian triad, the Son of the Nation, the Father of the Nation, the Spirit of Brotherhood and Unity, and resurrected sovereign body as represented in the maxim after Tito, makes Tito a romantic pop figure, as Mochnik notes, and can be seen as a far-fetched memory of the Yugoslav cultural, social, and political realm stored in the archive of the Slet ritual. Tito, as nickname, acquired in intelligence pre-war communist activity in Russia, so the legend goes, one of many. So this nickname is the integrator, a cohesive but farcical audio-visual Yugoslav interpolation. Derrida's notion of citation and iterability of a sign, of all signs, and especially the signature, known for aporetic disposition of being singular and iterative mark of the author, are a strong basis for my initial analysis. Following Konstantin Nakassis' concept of parasite, I would like to link the body's signing or citing the name Tito and the notion of parasite, or as Nakassis defined the parasite, open quote, that act alongside and beyond citation, a citational act which splits and doubles itself as citational and yet not quite citational. The displaced signature and the means and strategies of signing by bodies in a specific social choreography of Slet can be seen both as a repetitive act of love with the president's nickname, or as a differential act, the act of differentiating and deferring the signature to another chronotope, thus embodying and appropriating it. From one side, it appears to be the playing out of power or a representational strategy, and on the other, this body name signature is carnivalesque, maybe not intentionally, but certainly an act of making the name Tito non-originable or heterographic, or even a commodity. And as we can witness now, Tito's name, Tito, is reproduced in the infinity of copies, replicated as a badge, as an image reminder of the Day of Youth, as signed invitations to the celebration of ever-new birthdays of the deceased Tito. In this case, we are entering the realm of parasites, of the beyond of sameness and difference. In such cases, the citation exceeds itself as a citation. It stands beyond and beside its status as a citation. Hence, we have the parasite and the necessary possibility of counterfeits. The signature is always already citational, so the body name signature is a citation beyond or beside a citation, parasite, of that which it cites. During my grammar school education, and it was long before Tito died, the reader for some of the first 4 school years contained a short story with indicative title, Comrade Tito is watching all of us. The scene is set in a classroom, and we have 3 protagonists. The joyous children, Tito's portrait in a frame on the wall of the classroom, conveniently given above the story in the reader, watching the future readers of the reader, and the third protagonist is the omnipresent and all-knowing teacher. Argument is caused by between children. We have their names, Mile and Stanko, and the class collective as a whole. And they're asking, who is Tito looking at? Who is the receiver of his cryptic smile? Kids are arguing, but the winner is no one or everyone. The teacher pacifies them all, and the title is the answer. Comrade Tito is watching all of us. So the panoptic logic of sovereign's gaze is evenly distributed, and the desire that is inseparable from the power and knowledge is oddly never fulfilled because the panoptic gaze isn't one-directional, but nevertheless it is always desired. And this fragmented gaze affect is the children's only possession. Somatic topographies of nations and nationalities were manifested under a watchful eye of the marshal. In observing the festive young bodies writing Tito for Tito himself, and the bodies constructed a docile, fabricated dancing community of cellular, organic, genetic, and combinatory individuality, as Foucault states. The gaze of the sovereign is the symbolic political investment that produces Slet bodies of the Yugoslav youth. But as if some Titoid anamorphic skull is gazing in front of Tito, observing the dancing youth and the viewers at home, this blot gazing at the gazers is, from a Lacanian point of view, the crack in the symbolic order, thanato-Titoid, magical floating object that doubles the gaze and counterfeits the gazes between themselves as visible and hidden, the real and imaginary, life and death. Slets were held long after Tito's death and took place until 1987, as I already stated. There is an interesting anecdote in which the stadium appears as this haunting chronotope of spectral echoing temporality, and I would like to finish my paper with it in order to keep it open for some wandering voices to give it another tonality. In a stadium in Mexico, where the pelote competition was annually held, a multiple echo can be heard. The cheers of the spectators, which have been reflected many times against the stadium's walls, were roaring there after the spectators were long gone. People are missing, but the phantom voices and silhouettes are singing and dancing, inhabiting the future Titoscape and the nostalgic realm of the ruins of Yugoslavia.